Welcome to the Open Heart Project's Building a Mindful New Year. I'm Susie, your host, and it is my pleasure to sit here with you and to share this time with you. Make yourself at home here on our Zoom platform. You can play with the options on your screen, and if you get disconnected, just rejoin. We will be together here tonight for approximately 45 minutes. There should be time towards the end to ask questions or comment and reflect. And there's two options at the bottom of your screen to do just that. One is the chat bubble, and the other is the raised hand icon. So just tap into that chat bubble and type away any comment, question, or reflection. Or you can hit the raised hand icon to ask a question on screen. And today we welcome Kevin Townley as our teacher and meditation guide as we explore exertion, the fourth of the 6 paramitas that we are exploring during this Mindful New Year program. Check out Kevin's bio below this video, and please join me in welcoming Kevin.
Thank you so much, Susie, and thank you everyone for joining us on this wonderful transcendent adventure leading up to 2019. And yes, it is my great pleasure and delight to offer some thoughts and teachings on the 4th paramita, which is indeed called exertion. Pardon me, the Sanskrit word for any bookworms out there is virya, and the Tibetan word is tsandru, Tsondru. And breaking down the word tsandru, tsan, apparently, according to my Wikipedia, just kidding, I researched. It means to work hard, and dru means getting used to. So tsandru means getting used to working hard, and that's part of the sense of exertion. Now, these paramitas that we've been hearing about and practicing over the last couple of days are said to be ultimately post-meditation practices. So we can certainly contemplate them when we're doing our meditation practice, but they're ways that we show up in the world. Post-meditation means everything after you meditate. So your whole life, basically, is post-meditation. And so rather than necessarily being things that we do, they're actually ways of being in the world. So when we look at the previous 3, generosity, discipline, and patience, they're actually describers. They describe an action or a way a person is. So you would say like, oh, Susie is so generous. She is. But you wouldn't say, Susie did generosity, because that's weird and makes me have a bad taste in my mouth. P.S. That's my cat in the background who's desperate for attention. He is the embodiment of exertion, because he will not give up until he gets what he wants. 45 minutes, I'll be with you. So it's also said that the previous 3 paramitas, generosity, discipline, and patience, are when you add them together in an equation, generosity plus discipline plus patience, it equals exertion. And it's also said that exertion, looking backwards, is the fuel that keeps the previous 3 paramitas working. Without exertion, they all kind of collapse on themselves like a souffle. So we are going to do a little meditation practice where we review the previous 3 and see how they build up to exertion. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how these paramitas are also antidotes to obstacles that arise in our minds and in our lives, and then break down exertion a little bit more in detail. So take a good seat here. If you are on a meditation cushion sitting on the floor, Your legs can be loosely crossed in front of you or tucked beneath you, whatever feels comfortable for you. If you're sitting in a chair, as I am, the feet are just flat on the floor. And in either case, the sits bones are connected to the cushion, creating a strong, stable base from which the rest of the posture can arise. So the spine rises up naturally. We have a curve to the spine, which we maintain so that we're upright but not rigid. The head resting with ease at the top of the spine, the chin is slightly tucked. The face and the jaw are relaxed. And the hands just rest palms down on the thighs. Now we're going to be doing a little contemplation. So this is player's choice regarding the eyes. You can leave them open if you'd like to include some visual space, which is totally great. Or you can close them. Sometimes closing the eyes can help us to vivify the contemplation, the imagery, the visualization that we're doing. So that I will leave to you. If you close your eyes, you know how to do that. And if you leave them open, it's just a soft downcast gaze that lands about 3 to 6 feet in front of you. And it's a soft gaze. So whatever happens to be in that field of vision is totally fine. And we begin by just connecting with what it feels like to breathe. So finding where in the body you feel air coming and going. That might be the belly or the chest. At the end of the nose. By placing our attention on the breath, we synchronize the body and the mind. We've all perhaps heard the expression, leave the day at the door or leave your troubles at the door. But that is precisely what we don't do in our meditation practice. We start where we are, including whatever's going on in the environment that you find yourself. You might be in a city, you might hear traffic, you might be in the country and hear crickets, you might have a screaming cat, neighbors. Wherever we are is the perfect place to sit, to be with ourselves. And wherever we are, even if we are in a more seemingly serene rural setting, in this day and age, we can't escape the world. We are all connected anyway, but our gadgets and devices really heighten this reality to an almost alarming degree. So that while on one hand it can be a reminder of interdependence, it can also be completely overwhelming. So that over time, many of us react by kind of curling up on ourselves like armadillos trying to protect our tender bellies, staking out 3 square inches of personal space. We become self-absorbed, feel a kind of poverty mentality, It's cramped, hot, and claustrophobic. And luckily there is an antidote to this, which is the first paramita, generosity. Generosity liberates us from self-centeredness. We help others. And ironically, by doing this, we surrender personal space in favor of infinite space, completely open space, where we meet the world. And it's said that generosity can be expressed by offering something of material value, like food or money or clothing, or by offering protection from harm, standing up for someone who is vulnerable, perhaps. Or thirdly, by offering the Dharma, inviting someone to practice or study, or perhaps by just holding space for them, listening to another person. So very briefly, we could flash on a scenario where we're approached for help in some way, and where we might normally shut down or pretend we can't hear because our earbuds are in or whatever. We could instead imagine engaging. In one of these three styles of generosity, offering something of material value, protection, or dharma, wisdom. Through the paramita of generosity, we open up. We become permeable to the world, which while liberating can also be a little disorienting. When we're used to a cramped, dark space, and suddenly it's flooded with light, we might recoil somewhat. Perhaps not quite know where to focus our energies, our attention. And so the second paramita helps us, which is called discipline or morality, a sense of knowing what is beneficial and what isn't in a given scenario for you, not based on some sweeping moral code, but trusting your experience. Like the old expression, if you want to bake a cake, you need a pan. Discipline acts as the pan, this container principle that includes some stuff and excludes others. And it's said that when we work with discipline, you might feel a sense of joy, And so, working backwards, we could briefly contemplate an area in our lives where there doesn't feel like there's a lot of containment, or you might feel a little overwhelmed. Maybe a relationship, something to do with work, one's exercise regimen or something like that. We could simply contemplate how we might bring this notion of containment, of discipline, to bear in that area in order to give rise to more joy. This ability to see what is needed and what isn't. The precision of discipline can help us to get a routine, a rhythm in life that feels very good. But when that rhythm or that routine is disrupted, it does not feel good, it feels annoying. We become impatient, which is where the paramita of patience comes into play. Working with anger, this rigidity of mind that feels some other reality could or should be happening, and so we push back and storm off and so on. So patience brings the breath of spaciousness into a rigid mind. We could even imagine a situation where we might normally lose our cool, someone that pushes our buttons, and just imagine pausing, having the willingness to go into that rigidity with breath, the same way we might breathe deeply into a tight muscle when we stretch. In this brief meditation, we can look back and see that through the placement of our attention and our awareness, we're able to see that we can transform stagnated, rigid energies like self-centeredness, clinging, and anger into a more pliable, fluid possibility through a little bit of attention and effort. Seeing that no situation is unworkable gives us a sense of confidence and delight in working directly with where we are. So, as we close out our contemplation together, we could try to rouse a sense of delight. Having just sat and practiced with each other for a few minutes, we've exemplified our ability to tame our own minds. All right, so thank you very much. And exertion, believe it or not, is all about delight. It sounds like a big chore, like we're going to push a rock up a hill or force ourselves to do our homework or something we hate doing. And it's really not about that. Or in more conventional self-helpy kinds of parlance, we may hear phrases that are like, choose your own life, and just if you work really hard, then you'll get what you want. And if you don't get what you want, then you didn't imagine it beautifully enough. Or that we're going to like bend reality with our will based on our personal confused notion of what's going to bring us happiness. And that's not what this is. Exertion is not about bending the external world to our will, because mostly you can't do that. And if you feel that you can do that, you're probably relatively privileged and can maybe afford it. So this isn't drudgery exertion or banging your head against the wall. It's actually about working with things as they are, having a frank, clear look-see about your situation and working with the energy that you are sitting in, that you're walking in, that you're breathing in right now, not trying to like get to some other imaginary place. Now, this isn't to say that we don't have aspirations and a sense of possibility and hopefulness. In fact, exertion is about that exactly. But it's about starting where you are, being where you are. And I would venture to say that the real exertion, the effort that that's really required of us is to bring our attention away from the fantasy world, away from what we wish we had done in the past, what we hope to have in the future, and bring it back to what's happening right now. That takes real effort. It's not easy. But when we are able to do that, when we can actually look at what's happening, we can take incredible delight in the miracle of life. I was just having lunch today with a friend, and we were kind of complaining about something, and I looked at my salad and I lifted a leaf, and what I thought was a tomato was actually a strawberry. I was like, that's clever. Who thought of putting a strawberry in a salad? How did that get there? Suddenly I was sort of filled with like a sense of like wonder. And the fact that I'm sitting in a restaurant where I can have a strawberry on my plate means that I'm probably like 95% ahead of where most people are in the world. And to spend a lot of time beating myself up or wishing something else was happening is absurd when there's actually a beautiful strawberry nestled on a green lettuce leaf. Now, I want to unpack exertion a little bit more in detail, because as I was mentioning in our contemplation, these paramitas act as antidotes to obstacles. So generosity is an antidote to self-centeredness. Discipline is an antidote to clinginess, to hoarding or grasping. And patience is the antidote to anger. So exertion, you may not be surprised to hear, is the antidote to laziness. We all do it. In fact, it was almost divine intervention that I got this assigned to teach this paramita, because I often feel about myself that I am a deeply lazy person. But we're going to get into that a little bit more. So it's said classically that there are three kinds of laziness when it comes to Buddhist studies. And the first one is called it's kind of like general laziness. It's been described by one person as like sitting on this, or like lying on the sofa, and you want your Miller High Life, but you don't want to like get up to get it. So you like find a wire hanger from your dry cleaner and you like turn it into a hook and you pull it over, and then the beer falls over, and then it's a big mess. It's also, in more broader terms, described, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche described it as comfort orientation. So basically meaning that we're just constantly trying to make ourselves as comfortable as possible so that we don't have to think about the unpleasantness of life. We can just, instead of feeling upset about or the conversation we had at work, or connecting with those feelings about the difficult conversation, we can just lay a bunch of rainbow sherbet on top of it, or binge watch a bunch of Netflix shows. Nothing wrong with it. Give me some of that crown. But the idea is that when we're constantly trying to pad our psyches and our emotional worlds with comfort, we're numbing ourselves to a very, very, very important real reality, which is called death, impermanence and death. And so one way, a classical way of inspiring a sense of exertion, is to think about death. No one wants to do it. It's not fun. Our culture is designed to keep us away from thinking about that. We've packed the old folks into a home. We pay lots of people to take care of the dying. And we're all, face tuning and Instagram filtering ourselves to look younger and wrinkle-free. But we're falling apart moment by moment. And so the antidote to comfort orientation is to actually think about death. Now, a fabulous Buddhist teacher, an ancient teacher called Shantideva, wrote a book, or even like write a book, but he has a collection of teachings, his memoirs, called The Way of the Bodhisattva. And it's kind of like a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer character. I think he lives, don't quote me on this, but like, I don't know, 9th century, maybe 10th century, long time ago. He lived in a monastery in India. He was kind of like the janitor, but also a monk, when you're going to college and like have a work study thing, I don't know. So he was like kind of the janitor, and all of the other monks used to laugh and call him names, that kind of a vibe. And it was customary to for the monks to take turns teaching. And they all decided to play a hilarious prank and put Shantideva on the spot. He had no preparation. They're like, all right, janitor, why don't you get up there and teach? So he's like, well, I don't know, I'll try. And so he gets up there. They even make like a throne for him to make him look even more ridiculous. And then he completely lays out this unbelievable verse called The Way of the Bodhisattva, which outlines the 6 paramitas. And then apparently levitated and vanished. So talk about dropping the mic on that. But I wanted to read a couple of stanzas from The Way of the Bodhisattva about exertion. And it's quite lovely. So this is about applying the antidote to comfort orientation by contemplating death. These are 2 stanzas. Snared by the trapper of defiled emotion, enmeshed and taken in the toils of birth, how could I not know that thus I've strayed into the mouth, the very jaws of death? Don't you see how one by one death comes to claim your fellow men? And yet you slumber so soundly like a buffalo beside its butcher. Goy! We completely anesthetize ourselves all the time as a way of avoiding thinking about mortality, and we're not doing ourselves any favors, because then the moment comes and we haven't prepared. We haven't done any kind of taming of the mind. We haven't looked at how things arise and subside all the time. That's what we're observing in meditation practice. We see thoughts arise, crest, and subside. And we're constantly training ourselves in letting go, letting go, letting go, so that when the ultimate letting go is called for us to do, we don't panic. I mean, not that it's going to be a treat or fun or easy, but that we could at least spend some time thinking about this. And when we really think about it, you know, everyone does that. Well, if you heard that you were going to die today, what would you do? You'd be like, well, F this job. I'm not going to this dump. I'm going to like have that cake I've been denying myself. I'm going to like, you know, go to Buenos Aires. I don't know. I'm going to go go to a Broadway show. I'm going to have some laughs. I'm going to enjoy myself. And so there's a sense of like really putting reality into cold context. Like we don't have that much time to be sitting around and like, being like, I'll do it later. If there's something that you really want to do it now. You have the chance, you have the opportunity, not only to do things in your life, but to study the Dharma. That's what he's really getting at. Look at your mind, train your mind, and help other people, help others, and don't harm them and don't harm yourself. So while it's, you know, not very popular in our culture, this sense of contemplating death and reminding ourselves of the preciousness of human birth, I actually wanted to read another little stanza about this. He says, take advantage of this human boat, free yourself from sorrow's mighty stream. This vessel will be later hard to find. The time that you have now, you fool, is not for sleep. So a little tough love. He lays a little Tabasco on the topic. And sometimes we need that, especially if we're in this sort of like soporific state. But he also is tender-hearted, Shantideva, in his teachings. And he wants us to wake up so that we can have a good life and help others. So the first kind of laziness, comfort orientation, general laziness, the antidote is, remember you're going to die. Death comes without warning. This body will be a corpse, as it's sometimes said. The second one is a favorite of mine. It's called disheartenment. I can't do it. I just can't. If you're as old as I am, you maybe remember the old Sesame Street, where there was the piano player guy, and he'd be like playing the scales or trying to play the songs, and then he'd hit a wrong note. He's like, "No, I'll never get it. Never, never, never," banging his head on the piano. So that's disheartenment. It's this sense like, I just can't do this. And again, this is related to our Dharma practice, meditation practice, and life in general. Like, I just can't, it's too hard, I don't want to. And so when we feel disheartened, we go back into things that make us feel comfortable again. We go right back into comfort orientation. We engage with things that actually exacerbate our disheartenment. And so the antidote to this is to remember the second translation, I saved it for you, of exertion, which is enthusiasm. And I prefer that much more than exertion. It's also, the fourth paramita is called enthusiasm. So in a sense of like, all right, this really tanked. By God, we can do it again. We're going to try again. Because when we actually connect to the work that we're doing right now, playing the scales, even if we hit a sour note, there's a sense of like, oh, I like doing this. This is kind of fun. We have a sense of openness and possibility. In one of his talks, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche said, we're so hard on ourselves. If we have any kind of failure, if like we might have an initial inspiration, like, I'm going to write a short story, or I'm going to like macrame I don't know, a potholder, or write a play, or tell my friend that I've always been in love with them all these years, or I don't know, anything you feel like some sense of like enthusiastic inspiration to do, there is incredible delight. It might be scary. There might be some trepidation, some wobbliness, because we're actually engaging with groundlessness when we touch with inspiration and excitement. But then we profess our love, and they're like, I really appreciate it, and I love you too. I don't feel that way about you. Or the review for your hit musical is terrible. Or the poem just won't come together. You show it to a friend, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. I never really understood poems, so I'm sure it's good. We can feel like mortified. We can feel completely disheartened. We feel like, oh, F it. I can't do this. This is a stupid ruse. I should have gone to accounting school. Not shading any accountants who might be watching. Thank you for your work. But there's this sense of like, I can't do it. Forget it. And we start then beating up on ourselves because like, it's my fault that this isn't how it turned out. So what Chogyam Trungpa said was, what we forget in these scenarios is that there are so many causes and conditions flowing into every single moment that we cannot see, we can't possibly perceive, that are none of our business, that don't even enter our radar. That to blame ourselves or even to think that we know why something did or didn't happen is absurd. We just don't know. And so the best that we can do is try again or try something else, but have a sense of like, all right, well, that didn't work. The expression that he used, hold on, I wrote it down, to describe it is no big deal. All right, didn't work, no big deal. We'll start again. We can always start again. We can always rouse enthusiasm to try again. Always. There's always another opportunity. So disheartenment, the antidote to disheartenment is a sense of, yes, you can, or try again. So that's very helpful for me. And then the third one, which I started to get into, is self-recrimination. So we're like, it didn't work out, and it's my fault because I'm a damn idiot and I'm a stupid fool. And of course, we start telling ourselves stories about why we're idiotic frauds, and it was just a matter of time till everyone found out what horrible mutants we were, and it's not helpful. It just makes matters worse. We're planting seeds of recrimination which sour the mind, and when we're constantly browbeating ourselves, we sour the mind towards ourselves and towards others as well. And so there's another little stanza I'll read from Shanti Deva that says, do not be downcast, but marshal all your strength. Take heart and be the master of yourself. Practice the equality of self and other, and practice the exchange of self and other. So he's giving us advice. He's actually telling us how to work with this self-recrimination, which is completely useless. The first is to marshal your strength, he says. That's a reminder. Study the Dharma. Express the exertion of mind to move away from these old reruns of self-recrimination. You're an idiot, and they always do, and it's your fault. It's not helpful. It's as Sokuzan, our teacher here, who will be speaking tomorrow night, says, don't go into bad neighborhoods. Meaning, there are certain areas in the mind that are not helpful for you to pursue. You know where they lead. They're dead ends at best. Maybe cul-de-sacs that you get caught doing donuts in. Don't go there. So redirect your attention. Use exertion, enthusiasm to redirect your attention onto the Dharma, and don't add on to negative thought patterns. Just don't do it. The second one, he says, master yourself, meaning take responsibility for your emotions. If you're in a shitty mood, pardon my French, that's your mind. You don't have to take it out on other people. And so really taking responsibility for our own minds, our own mental states, our own emotions, which does not mean to suppress them or to get rid of emotion, to actually spend time with them, to connect with the feelings that we have, but don't add on with them with a bunch of stories about whose fault it is and why, blah, blah, blah. Useless, completely useless. Exertion, cut that out and come back to your experience. Master yourself. And the last one is he says, well, just say the actual words about the sameness of others. Sorry, I didn't expect you to know. Practice the equality of self and other. Practice the exchange of self and other. So these are practices that we can do in our everyday lives. Simply put, Pema Chodron calls the first one just like me. So when you're like in a tailspin, you're like, I'm just blah, blah, blah. raise your gaze. If there's another person in the vicinity, without being a weirdo about it, you can mentally say, just like me, that person has felt like a jerk. They felt confused. They felt depressed. They felt unlovable or like a creep or whatever. And so something reminding, like, we're all in this together. Nobody knows what's going on. And if they say they do, they're probably trying to sell you something, which you can't afford. Maybe you can. So the sense of including others, reminding ourselves, like, we're all just really trying to be human beings, and it's not easy. And the second practice is called Tonglen, which you may have heard of. Tonglen is a Tibetan Buddhist practice, which means the practice of exchanging yourself for another. So there's a whole sitting practice, which is quite involved, so I won't get into it right now. But in your life, it's said that when you are going about your day, someone cuts you off in traffic, you see a homeless person, people being nasty to each other in public, reading a headline that's upsetting, rather than like averting your gaze and trying to get into the your comfort zone or blaming others, you can actually breathe in the feeling of anguish, confusion, and pain. Allow it to pierce your heart, because that's life. It's difficult. And by acknowledging that it's difficult and feeling that difficulty in the moment, rather than trying to laminate over it with some story, we are connecting to our compassion, the ability to feel the pain of another person. It gets our head out of our own cans. We engage, even if from afar, and then we imagine sending out the wish of relief and delight to this situation, to the argument that we've overheard on the checkout line, to the person who's panhandling for money on the curb, whatever it may be. We're actually allowing our discomfort with that situation to be the gateway to which we are able to train ourselves to try to bring some relief, or at least not to look away. It's baby steps, but it's an opportunity to try to short circuit our self-centeredness. And when we're able to do this, the fruition is said to be delight. We have delight in our lives, and we want to work. We want to put the effort in to engage with others, to try again, to be kind to ourselves. Because when we do, so many other opportunities, that sound like Tony Robbins, but like possibilities, a field of possibilities open up to us. And that it is self-generated, it comes from within us, it's who we are. And so we can bring a kind of enthusiasm to the world, which is contagious. In fact, I just watched the new Mary Poppins. And Mary Poppins as a character is actually quite an Exertion character. She's very precise, but she also, in her precision, her love for cleanliness and hard work, she brings delight to children and to adults, and reminds us that the world is actually wonderful if we can stop, gather our attention, bring it back to what's happening right now. That's where the magic is. So thank you so much, everybody. It's exactly 7:45, so if you need to peace out, please do so and don't feel bad. But we've got, I don't know if we have any questions or comments, Susie. I'm happy to stay a little longer if you are. Chat.
Yes, I'm fine. And before we get to the comment that has been left, just deep appreciation and blessings to you, Kevin. It's just a delight to sit. Look at what we're able to accomplish with a little exertion and internet magic to sit together, folks from all over the world. So what an honor and a pleasure it is to sit with you and share this time and to hear these teachings and to sit in meditation. Don't be afraid of your own enthusiasm, and thank you. And from Charlotte says, Kevin, this is so, so, so wonderful and what I need. I have been drowning in loss of heart. Great and helpful talk. Kiki. And Teresa says, thank you for this. Really appreciate your humor as you talk about this topic. So Charlotte, Teresa, thank you. Thank you for your questions. And no more are coming up, but as always, and like I say all the time, I will wave my hands wildly as I pass the screen back to you. And again, thanks to all who have gathered with us tonight. And I'll give it back to you, Kevin, to finish our container with a dedication and any final thoughts and words you might have. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Susie. And you really do embody exertion. You always show up to host these and make it possible for people to connect and hear these teachings. So deep gratitude to you, deep gratitude to all of you for joining us. And to close out, taking a good seat, sitting upright, trying to connect to a sense of delight, something that you appreciate that's in your world right now, that fills your heart, that makes you feel appreciative, tender, and engaged. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.